What's up, everybody? Welcome to the How To podcast. Today, I am so thrilled to have Rachel Glass with us. Rachel is the founder and CEO of Glosslab. Glosslab is modernizing the manicure in the most hygiene first and efficient way. Glosslab has locations across the country and a product line. Rachel is a female entrepreneur, a former fundraiser for hedge funds, and a mom of two. She is passionate about brands and service, operating a high-growth business, venture capital, balancing work and mom life, and of course, of all things nail and beauty. Rachel's how-to is how to make a career pivot into entrepreneurship. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us. I've obviously spent a ton of time in New York, so I knew about your company before I knew about you because I feel like I see it on every block. But I'd love people to just get to know a little bit more about you and your background before we dive into all this great content we're going to talk about today.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and chatting with you. I always loved talking to you. And my background is I went to business school. I worked in finance for about 10 years in hedge funds. When I was doing that, I always felt like a manicure was part of my week. It was part of what made me feel put together and polished. I've always been very entrepreneurial in nature and ultimately left the world of finance after having my second daughter and really wanting to pursue something more entrepreneurial, but found that the experience of getting my nails done was this errand. It was part of my week, but there was no brand in this space. So there was nothing that I found that was in between sort of mom and pop on the corner and high-end spa, and created Glosslab really to create a brand in this space. And I talk about it like a fitness concept, similar to, to Solid Core, where you know what you're getting. It's this known entity. It's a known quantity every single time that you go. So for Glosslab, this is hygiene, waterless. We have a membership-based model. It's really focused on cleanliness, efficiency. How do we make this a super efficient experience, but also fun at the same time?
Yeah, and I love that because, and I agree. Before we even met, I talked to my PE guys, and I'm like, there is no brand in the nail space, and someone's going to do it, and it's so fragmented, and there isn't sort of that experience, and it has that real scalability. And I have never seen a nail salon close. It is one of those things that women enjoy doing. So I always felt like there was a really big potential. So congrats to you for diving into it. Let's kind of go back to when you were in the beginnings of thinking about it. What were some of the first steps that you took once you had the idea and were like, oh, I see a real possibility here? What were kind of steps one through 3?
So in the very beginning, as you know, it starts as an idea. And the beginning, what was challenging for me is I would push myself. I would push myself to basically do 3 things a day to push my idea forward. And at the time, sometimes they just seemed silly. Like it was talking to someone in the industry. It was going to visit 20 nail salons in one day throughout New York and just observe and watch customers. At one point, I hired a TaskRabbit there was so little data on the nail salon industry. I hired several TaskRabbits actually, to stand outside nail salons at different times of day in different areas in New York City and count the amount of people going in, out, how long they were in there. And that was really how I built the model for Glosslab. And at the time when I was doing this and like paying TaskRabbits to stand outside nail salons, I was like, this is crazy. Like if I lost my head, what am I doing? I had a really good job in finance. Like, what am I doing? So I think in the beginning, it's just taking that chance and it was pushing myself to do these little things, and sort of you can get in your own way all the time. I still do it, but pushing through that and saying, you know what, I'm just going to keep going and doing these 3 things a day and pushing and doing things forward.
And how did that lead to the first opening? When did you feel like you had enough data? And let's talk a little bit about the finance piece, because your journey and my journey is the same, meaning we had a first location. And with Solidcore's first location, one, I had never had a commercial lease before. I didn't know anything about that process. I knew what I wanted to do with fitness, the experience on that side. But I'm like, okay, what do you mean you want 35 grand for a security deposit? There was just a lot of things that I committed to and then, found out, of course, later, which I think actually is a superpower, because when you're committed to the idea, like you will figure it out one way or another. So I'm curious to know, if you were a little bit more analytical with your business background than I was.
I really don't think I was, quite honestly. I the same as you. I bootstrapped for the beginning, and I wanted to prove the concept before I even raised money, before I scaled it. So I opened initially as a pop-up. That pop-up became our first 2 locations of Glosslab, and then I went to scale and to raise money. But in the beginning, it was, let's take it slow. I shouldn't say let's take it slow, because nothing's ever slow, but let's get our feet wet, try these 2, bring in the right people. So bringing in, a partner who knows real estate, and bringing in people I don't want to say in the industry, but others that have strengths that I didn't have.
Yeah. And can I ask how, what were you looking at from the financial perspective? How much money did it take you to get going?
All of these 4-wall concepts are obviously cash intense upfront. I did it in the least expensive way, I would say. For the first 2 in particular, it was really just get the doors open. It's something that's actually stayed with us, even though we have 20 plus locations now. We still open them for very little. So I've taken that scrappy mentality that we had in the beginning and kept it going. We've definitely improved and do things a lot better now than I did by myself in the beginning, but it's really taking that mentality from day one.
I couldn't agree more. What I always try to tell people is make sure you're spending money on things that have ROI. So, you don't want to spend money on a desk that's going to cost you $50,000, because the desk isn't going to have anything to do with the experience of people coming in and out, right? How are people, for you and me, obviously the product needs to be good. For you, it's nails. And for us, it's the workout. But the experience itself for Solidcore, I'm like, okay, spend money on the mirrors. We need to make sure the mirrors, the lighting, the sound system, the machines that people work out on, and the coaches obviously are all top notch. Everything else, we have desks from IKEA at Solidcore. We do not care. It does not make a difference in the experience. And there's a lot of money that can be spent without any ROI. It's one of the key things I say. And we did the same thing. We were so scrappy. I mean, I put pallet wood on Solidcore's first studio because I didn't have another 10 grand for someone else. I'm like, I'm going to do it myself. I don't care. I'm going to do it myself. So it's really important. And I can speak to that, Rachel, as I know you've started to raise money. Private equity loves that. Private equity hates when they give infusions of cash and people just go spend because, oh my God, we have $10 million. We can now put a pool table, in the staff lounge and blah, blah. It's like, no, that's, you got to be able to justify the expense on the return of investment always.
Right. And you're so right. It's exactly, exactly what you're saying with Solidcore. I see it too, where it's like the lighting matters, the mirrors matters, because that's part of how you feel when you're there.
Right.
And I think about that with Glosslab. Yes, we're doing a manicure, but at the end of the day, we're making people feel good. You feel empowered. If you have a manicure, it's like you can take on your day, you go to work, you ask for that promotion, or you go and do whatever it is for you that you're going to kind of win your day. And that's how I think. It's like we're providing this ability to have confidence, to take on, what comes in your path. And it is that is the art. It's the things that make that difference. So for Glosslab, it's super clean, super great service. It's great products, but the front desk, like it has to look clean, but it doesn't need to cost $10,000.
Totally. And you realize how like there are certain places like cleanliness is so important. You know, you've heard all the stories about fungus and nails and all of those things. And I do think how you make people feel when they walk into an experience. You know, a lot of people don't know why they like something or why they do something. They can't really articulate it. This is like a big marketing trick. And what I learned through Solid Core is people, they wouldn't admit this, but everybody stares at themselves in the mirror for 50 minutes. They watch themselves work out, you know, like, and I'm like, if I've learned anything about people love watching themselves in the mirror, do work, they're not wearing a lot of clothes, the lighting is good. And so like even at Ambition, when I open, I'm like mirrors everywhere. Mirrors, lighting, again, it's like we are not skimping there. And how we make people feel that we have a signature scent in both Ambition and Solid Core, like, you know, there's an aura that you're creating, again, that people might not know why they feel great in your space, but they do. And when they are making a decision, if they want to come back, they have an emotion already attached to it of like, I don't feel great there, or I do feel great there. I like how I feel there, and they may not know why.
100%. And it is. It's those intangible pieces of, you know, for nails, it's like they use no water. It's clean. That's something about that. Like that feels better. It feels clean.
And I also say, Rachel, one thing that is the thing that you guys pitch a lot is like, we're waterless. And I will tell anybody out there, if you want to build an experiential brand in any space, restaurant, nail salon, fitness, you have to figure out what your unique differentiator is, and you need to own it and promote it and like make sure it's very, you know, clear of what makes you unique in the space. And I think people think like, oh, I don't want to open a nail salon. Like there's so many of them. I'm like, yeah, but can you do it better? And can you differentiate yourself enough that you become the place that like, oh, I go to Glosslab because like they don't use water there and it's super clean. And like, have you heard all the stories about people getting fungus, you know, whatever. Right. And you have to find what that niche is, and you need to hammer it home again and again and again. And I also tell folks, I'm curious what you think about this, is don't be afraid to be polarizing. A lot of brands out there, you know, and again, Solid Core included, and now Ambition, and I can speak to that. People hate Solid Core or they love it. And we're like, we're okay with that. We're not trying to be the brand for everybody. And I'm sure you would say the same thing. You know, for people who are just looking to go get their nails done as cheap as possible, you're probably not the place that people are going to go.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. I mean, I think we are completely waterless. I'm a lifelong germaphobe, like a pre-COVID germaphobe until way before everyone became a germaphobe. So the core for me in starting Glosslab was super clean. I did a ton of research. I went to nail technician training school myself. I wanted to see what they taught about hygiene, which is very little, basically nothing at all. So that's really been at the forefront for me of everything we do. Water is a breeding ground for germs and bacteria, so completely took that out of the service. It actually is worse for your nails. Like it changes the shape of your nail. The polish doesn't even apply as well. So there's all these reasons, hygiene and otherwise. But we, you know, I think as part of that, the experience it's unique because of that, and because we really took this stand for people who go to get a manicure pedicure and like to put their feet in a tub of rose petals and spend 2 hours at the spa. Like they're not our customer, you know what I mean? Or they're not our, you know, our solid customer base.
And can you articulate who is your customer then? And what have you learned about having 20 locations and who your customer is and how you speak to them?
Yeah, our customer, I mean, we really focus also on efficiency. So it's not an express service, but it's very efficient. A lot of that is even the efficiencies of outside of the service. There's online booking, cashless checkout. So sort of those micro moments that take time in the nail salon, we've completely cut them out. I've vetted all of the polish we use. Some is Glosslab brand, some are other brands, but all polish is really performance based. So it's going to last and it's going to apply quickly. and dry quickly. So taking out all of those pieces. I would say our customer, both male and female, heavier on the female side, but definitely both. I would say our customer, they are busy. So a manicure is, it's a part of their routine and of their week, particularly our membership community, but they are not looking to spend 2 hours getting a manicure. They're looking to spend 30 minutes, and make a really efficient experience. I think of a manicure and pedicure that it's unlike a massage, where a massage is enjoyable. A manicure, pedicure, you're really looking for the end result. Mm-hmm. So it's not about the service itself. It's sort of about the end result. And that's really what we see, I would say, across our entire customer base.
Yeah. And you guys, these are such important things as you look about different industries and, what makes a customer want to come back, and knowing what they are looking for and what you can provide. I think you're totally right. There are some people who are like, oh, they want to go to this salon and they want to take a long time, right? There is that customer base out there. And then you have someone like me where I won't go to a salon unless I can do my manicure and pedicure at the same time, because I've got things to do and I don't have 2 hours to sit there, and like sometimes I'll book like the place that I had in Chelsea when I was spending more time in New York. I would be like, I have a call to do. Like, can I do this call in here? I just needed to feel like I was doing something while getting my nails done. Yeah. I do this, and I do the same with massages. I get massages twice a week. Like, I work out every day, and I listen to a podcast or an audiobook every time I get a massage, because I need the massage to relax my muscles and whatever. And also I want to feel like I'm consuming, content that I'm learning. But anyway, it just goes to show you all again the different customer base and knowing.
I'm with you.
Yeah. But I really
need the no chill factor.
Totally. And it's like, I feel smart and efficient when I'm like, oh, cool. Like I'm learning all these amazing things, this book I wanted to read, and like this guy's getting the knot out of my back.
Exactly.
I hate it when brands say that they're like, oh my God, we're for everybody. I'm like, now I'm not interested in your brand. If you can't somehow communicate who your customer is and be okay with, whether upsetting somebody else, like that isn't a brand that you can really build. And I see it, guys, in private equity. They look for the same thing. You don't need to have 100% of people be interested in what you're doing. I mean, I always used to give this example with solid core too, that the majority of people out there have never heard of solid core, let alone taken a class, and like I built this business into several $100 million, business, and, no more people know about it now than before, but there's $1 billion businesses out there that nobody's ever heard of. And so you just need to find your niche. You just need to be really great at it. And you need to continue to, execute on a great product. I want to talk a little bit about, the beginning phases for you, and when you started to realize like, okay, I got a couple of these open, what you were really great at, Rachel, because I'm sure how you were spending your time back then is different now. And, talking about that process for folks as they get going. And when you start to realize, okay, cool, this is my best value for the business of where I can be putting my time, and I need someone else to come in here and do this. What was that process like for you?
So I do feel like my role, while I've been the founder and CEO from day one, that role has meant so many different things, which I'm sure you've seen the same. In the beginning days, I literally would go from a meeting with an investment bank to then ordering toilet paper for our stores. Not joking. And everything in between. So that is no longer the case. Thankfully, that we've gotten scale and I have this really, really amazing team. I would say a few things. I've still kept it very lean and scrappy. Same thing as the beginning. I did not raise money and hire 100 people. Still really kept a very tight team, because I actually have always felt that it's just more productive. Everything works better if we have fewer really strong people in place in different roles. For myself, I love the brand. I love building the brand. I've really, from the beginning, also stayed the customer. So in starting Glosslab, I found what was missing for me was the customer experience of getting your nails done, and still try to stay the customer. So walking into my locations, getting services, things that are missing for me as the customer, things that are working as the customer, but always taking angle and leading really in that direction. And then I would say I've really hired people around me who have strengths that I don't. So we recently brought in a president with a very strong operating background for four-wall. That is something that I don't have. So that's been amazing. And I would say across the board, really hiring in that same way, where there are people that are, in those areas better than me at doing those things. I try to only do the things that, not only do the things, but make it a priority to do the things that only I can do or only I'm the best at, and delegate as much as possible otherwise.
Yeah, a really good trick. And again, you guys, you can't scale without doing that in the beginning phases. And hopefully it's confirmation for folks. Rachel and I have the same stuff. I mean, guys, beginning Cellacore, I was coaching 20 classes a week because it's like, that's my product. And it's a little bit different than, nails, right? Like the coach makes, as you know, makes a big difference in somebody wanting to come back. How do we make them feel? Did we communicate empathy? It was really important in those beginning phases of Cellacore that I was in that studio all the time, talking to my clients, getting feedback, seeing their reactions, building again the connection between clients. That was the best use of my time. Obviously, as the company grew and we got to I'm not on the schedule and I'm sitting here talking to you, and there are classes happening in 100 different studios right now, and I'm not coaching one of them. So at some point, learning to graduate and saying yes on the first 6 months. Me coaching in the studios was one of the most important things I could have been doing. And then if I wanted to build and scale 6 months later, how am I ensuring, because I can't scale it, right? Just like you can't scale it if people are only going to want to go to that one coach. You need amazing technicians in every studio that are delivering the consistent experience that people are not going to say, well, Rachel, I'm not going to go, book a manicure today because the 4 technicians I want aren't available. That can't be one of the factors that makes it difficult to scale. So thinking about your business and saying, okay, where is the scalability? And if it's dependent or reliant on you, that's when people get in trouble and you realize you built a brand about you instead of a brand around a company and a concept and structure and infrastructure.
Yes, I could not agree more. And it's true. It's in the beginning, when we had 2 locations, I was in my locations every single day because that was the best use of my time, quite frankly, speaking to the customers, looking at the operation, seeing what was working, seeing what wasn't working. Now that we have so many, that's not the best. I'm definitely in my locations a lot, but it's not the best use of every single day. And that has changed. I think, and also I'm sure you've done this too, but I feel like there's people on my team now that I have worked with for so long now that they sort of, our process has gotten so much more efficient. So if it's an email to go out marketing, before I even see it, it's like they sort of know the headspace. They know the things they know what I'm going to say ahead of when I say it. So that's where we are now, but it wasn't in the beginning.
Yeah. Super. I mean, it's so important. And I've seen fitness concepts where they want to scale, but they have only built their brand around themselves. They're on all of the marketing. And it's like, it feels like people want to maximize on their own personal brand. And then they realize, shit, I can't, people are coming here for me. So it's really being mindful of that balance. As the founder, you need to embody the brand, but the brand can't embody the founder. Super important. And as you will continue to grow too, I'm getting really ahead of myself, but for people listening and who are scaling, succession planning, depending on if you want to bring your business to an exit, which, I was very clear about. I literally remember saying that in an interview when I had 2 locations, like I want to build an empire and I want to sell it at some point. If you continue to remain the CEO, and people who want to buy your business don't have any other data points of, well, is this thing going to work without you being the CEO? It makes your company less valuable. And it really takes ego getting out of the way, which I had to work through a couple of times when I've left organizations that I've started. But I didn't want to get stuck. I didn't want to get stuck selling my business and then the private equity team saying, okay, Anne, we're not buying this unless you're coming with, and we're not going to pay you for all your equity. You got to earn it out. And I'm like, I never wanted that to happen. So, of course, put Brian in place a couple of years ago as CEO, and he's doing an incredible job as I got less and less involved in the business. And just, again, best piece of advice I can give for anybody who's trying to build, scale, and exit: continue to invest in your team, continue to empower your team, to give them agency to run the business and make it work without you. Is that sort of what I would love to hear more? Rachel, when you guys are, what is the plan now that you've got 20 locations, which is awesome? Yeah. Like, what's the next couple of years look like?
Thank you. And I do agree with what you're saying. I think it almost sounds off when you say it to make yourself replaceable, but you really have to do that, because it's exactly what you're saying. It can't just be, a brand, a founder brand. It has to be a brand that can stand on its own legs.
Yeah.
So we have 20 Glosslab locations. We are moving into franchising, which is really exciting. So we have our first franchisees, which are going to open Glosslab. It's really exciting for me to see this grow sort of beyond just the corporate locations into franchise. We already have a product line, but we're moving into products in a much more substantial way.
Yeah.
And really just continuing to grow Glosslab. I mean, I do think, and I've said manicures are an errand. A big part of that is a manicure to me has to be convenient. So the locations of where you're getting that manicure, you're not traveling too far. And I think that really works as we grow and as we scale for more and more Glosslabs, that I really see Glosslab on many, many corners, not just in New York City, but beyond.
Awesome. So that's amazing. Congrats. Where are you guys in the franchising aspect? Like, can people, if they're interested, can they learn more? Like, what's the timeline of when you think the first franchise will open?
The first franchise will open in a matter of weeks, so very, very soon. And yes, if people are interested, I mean, it depends on the state, so I'll caution with that. But yes,
yeah, that's so exciting, and I think it's a great model for you guys. Again, there's the speed to market that you'll get by franchising and really building the brand in a space where there isn't one. And you guys have a membership model too, right?
We do. So we have about 50% of our customers are members, and it's unlimited per month. So unlimited manicures and pedicures with our membership. And to me, nails really lent themselves to a membership model, just because it was something that our members are coming in almost every week for a manicure, a couple times a month for a pedicure, but it's really part of, I call them the regular gym goers. Like, nails is part of their routine, that they're getting their nails done all the time.
Yeah, I think it's super smart. As you start to think about that, and most people who do their nails do. It's not something that they do like twice a year. It's a consistent thing as part of their maintenance, whether it's, again, facials, working out, massages, or something. It's part of the schedule.
Yes, exactly.
What are some of the challenges that you guys, I guess where you are, talk a little bit about the challenges that you sort of saw in the beginning, and business is about solving problems. So what were some of those challenges then versus now for you, the company, that you guys are working on navigating?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, and we touched upon this earlier, is just, getting started. And for me, that was just putting things into action. So just doing things, because people have ideas all day long, but it's really just what are the actions you're taking to actually start in the beginning. So to me, that was the early days. And
Rachel, to comment on that, that's where most people get stuck, right? They're like, I have this thing and like, I don't know where to start. And then they create this A to Z. And then, well, what if this happens and this and this? I don't know how to do that. So I'm just not going to do it. Like, talk to me a little bit more about how did you have those thoughts also, like when you were beginning, or were you like, nope, I'm all in, I know what to do and whatever? Like, what was the process of, did you stop and start? Like, how long were you sitting on the idea?
I would say I got in my way 100 times. I still do. So it was a lot of stops and starts in the beginning. It was, am I crazy that I'm doing this, this passion project of mine when I could have a job? Or, like in the beginning, it was all the time and constant. But I knew there was something in me that I've always been very entrepreneurial. And I knew that this idea would work. I knew that if I kept going, it would get there. But I had to really keep pushing and do that work just on myself. If there was one, I guess I also worked in hedge fund fundraising for a long time. So I would joke that you would get, sort of people saying no all day long for that one yes. And I think that built a lot of resilience. So in starting Glosslab, of whether it was an investor or vendors or leases or things that were just like didn't work, I could keep going.
Right. Yeah, that must have been helpful, because you guys, when you are listening, you're going to get people telling you, no, this is a bad idea. Why would you? I mean, there's constant naysayers out there. And again, it's people's own securities that are usually manifesting, or they're trying to protect you from quote unquote, failure or making a wrong decision. Did you deal a lot with that in the beginning too? And did you have support? Did you have more supporters and you had people filled with doubts?
I definitely had more non-supporters of like, I don't understand. You're opening a nail salon. There's so many nail salons, all the time. Yeah. So all the time. I think that's natural. I think getting that doubt, I think that can also stop you in the beginning. People like think the idea isn't good. So it's, it's, if you believe it's good, you have to work for it too. It doesn't just happen. I'm sure people see you and it's like, you're so, and I get this comment sometimes of like, you're so lucky you have this business. And I'm like, it's not lucky and it's not easy and it's a lot of work every day, all day.
Yeah. And a lot of uncertainty, and the buck stops at you. There's no protection. There's no boss to look up to. There's no out of office. There's no, of course, there's none of that. And it's important for you guys listening too. And I think it's really, because Rachel's right about that. People can discredit, and it happens all the time. I have, this CNBC article that came out recently talking about the solid core sale, and must be so nice to just have $175,000 to invest. I'm like, well, I didn't. I saved that for 6 years. I put every dollar away I could. I didn't go on trips. I didn't go on vacations. I sacrificed a lot, to get there. And the doubters, the cheap seats, people criticize. I mean, guys, that's never going to go away. Most people are going to take the mindset of, what if it doesn't work? And focus on that versus, oh my God, what if it does work? And just know that. And one of my best pieces of advice, and I didn't have this back then because I didn't come from a family of friends of entrepreneurs, is make sure you're asking and seeking advice from people who've done it, because you need more of that in your head than people who have never done it. And when I was starting my first nonprofit, everybody was like, this is ridiculous. What do you mean you're going to build a running club for for your job? And no one saw what I saw. And it was like, how are you going to pay your bills? These guys are going to quit. This is just too Pollyanna. I mean, you name it. And I want everybody to know that any entrepreneur out there had those doubts flying at them from everybody also. It's not a you thing. Like, you are capable of doing this. You just need to drown out the noise. I try to tell people that all the time.
I could not agree with that more. I think it is really hard in the beginning because you're right. There's so many more people that are going to say no and have doubts, and it's not you, it's not the idea. It's usually about them or about what they have experienced. But it's really hard to stay focused and to keep that confident.
Yeah. And again, you, me, we all had moments of self-doubt. Like, people just think, oh, you must have not. Like, of course we had that, but you have to have a strategy to work through it. And the more that you get actually data of like, oh, I solved that problem, it's just a coin in the meter. Oh, turns out I am pretty good at solving problems. Turns out I'm really resilient. And you have to continue to feed that versus the doubts, the go under your covers and whatever. I'm curious also because I want to talk a little bit about mindset. Do you think anybody can be an entrepreneur?
I think anyone can be. I think you have to want it. I think you have to want it and you have to love it. So I'm truly a believer in that you're going to be better at something if you love it. For me, I sort of knew this was my calling. Like, this is what I really wanted to do. Yeah. I had great jobs in the past, but I didn't love them. I work so much longer and harder now, but I love it. So it doesn't feel like work. So I think, yes, if you love it and want it.
Yeah, I also tend to agree. It's not so much about the skill sets. It is about that, your desire, like, will you do whatever it takes? And I also think it's, will you put skin in the game, right? Like, will you put it all out there and know that if this doesn't work out, it's going to be very uncomfortable for you, either financially, reputationally. Like, those are the kind of founders that I look to back of, like, how much do you really have invested here in all areas, of your life. And if you're not willing to do that, it tells me that you're doubting yourself, that like you won't invest in yourself there. And I think it's, do you have the ability to solve problems and how you handle stress? If you're somebody who gets overwhelmed at uncertainty, like, I would never recommend being an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Right. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. And then I think, as we get close to wrapping up here, if you've got some, again, advice for folks. I know you talked about just getting started, but if you can put yourself back into that place in the beginning phases, because that's where I think a lot of our listeners are, of like, oh, I want to, I'm not really sure. And I always try to offer some advice around that. Like, those people who are maybe hungry enough, but just, again, feel and are maybe overwhelmed with the idea of failure. What's your advice for working through that?
I would say, I think a few things. I think doing the work really on yourself is so, so important, of just having it. And this is not an easy thing to suggest, but really just, if it's through a friend or a network or a coach or a therapist, but doing that work on yourself to really, look at yourself, what you want to do, what you're passionate about, what gets in your own way. I think and it's obviously not a one-time thing, it's a continuous thing. So I think that in the beginning, I always love talking to people and still do. So others who are in the space that you're looking to go into, other entrepreneurs, other people on the other side of the table, those, investing capital into startups, into businesses. I think having those conversations, and just, if it's, it's not always your own network, but your network's network, and really pushing those. That for me was really, really key early days.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and again, getting yourself surrounded with people who have done it, who believe in entrepreneurship, who have success in it. So again, the data points in your head, you start to be like, oh, I have more people that have made it than versus talking to this group over here who is not even willing to try. And that can, again, cause the limiting belief system. I mean, is it really real, you guys? I know people talk about mindset and we talk about like, how we feel about ourselves. It is absolutely imperative you feel confident in your abilities and you trust yourself enough to figure it out. And you have empowering beliefs in those areas versus disempowering beliefs. If you don't trust yourself to figure it out and you don't think you're the right person to figure it out, it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to make it. And that's just the truth in my mind.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that, you can't look to others for that. Like, it has to be yourself. Like, you have to believe in yourself. And it's hard though. It's hard to always do that. I doubt myself all the time,
right?
Multiple times a day, but it's that ability to still keep going.
Yeah. And I tell myself too, like, it's really easy to get in our heads around that stuff. And we have to sit back and be like, everybody has doubts. Everybody has had, in entrepreneurship, has had these things pop up that they didn't expect. It's like, this isn't a personal problem. I'm not being attacked here like that. Oh, poor me. And I can find a lot of comfort in knowing that this is actually just what entrepreneurship is, right? Like, when you set your expectations, like, this is what it is. You wake up and something happened and you got to deal with it, and expecting, it to be different or to only have problems that how to solve, like, get your expectations different and you won't be so frustrated.
Yeah.
And I also ask everybody at the end of the podcast, success is different for us throughout our life and how we define it based on how old we are, based on our goals, priorities, all of those things, circumstances. If you have to define success for you today, like in this moment, in this era that you're in, how do you know, Rachel, at the end of the day, if like you had a successful day?
I had a successful day. I look at, I'm a planner, so I look at each day, like I plan my day the night before, and I go back to this top 3, but what are the 3 things that like have to get done? Mm-hmm. So I would say that's on paper, sort of how I measure the day. And then I look at to me, it's really important that I have time to fill my own tank. So for me, that's exercising. It's every single morning I'm up early. With that time, sort of, I have 2 young daughters at home and my husband, and it gets busy. So I really need that time early in the morning. If I don't have it, and of course there's days that stuff happens, it's not always as a successful day for me. That's sort of my metrics. And then just, am I happy? Which I am. And I love what I'm doing. Outside of obviously family and personal, I really love what I'm doing. I did feel like before starting Glosslab, working in finance, there were too many days in a row where I just didn't love what I was doing.
Yeah.
And that to me was like a huge warning sign that something had to change.
Yeah. I know our bodies, our skin, they tell us a lot, whenever my dermatologist always says, like, our skin is the window to what's going on. So I pay something doesn't feel right. Like, our bodies know when we are carrying stress or carrying something that needs to be dealt with. It's a really great indicator, especially for folks like you and I that work out a lot and again are so in tune with health and how we feel. So amazing. Well, where can people find Glosslab right now? Are you guys just in New York, or no? You're in New York, DC.
Yeah, we're in New York, DC, Dallas, and Miami, and soon to be in many other cities and states around the country.
Yes, if you guys haven't gone, get yourself to a Glosslab. And also for those listening who are considering entrepreneurship and ever wanted to get involved in, something with nails, manicures, pedicures, sometimes franchising is a really great starting point because you get a lot of support from somebody who's done it. You get to help build a brand, but you're not doing it, completely by yourself. So I recommend franchising a lot to folks for their first sort of step into entrepreneurship. So can folks find out more about that on the website too?
Definitely. Yes.
Okay.
Glosslab.
Glosslab.com.
Yes.
Cool. Well, Rachel, thank you so much. I am back in New York next week, and hopefully I get a chance to see you maybe for a manicure, but maybe also for a workout.
I love it. Let's do both.